He was the 46th governor of Pennsylvania, born right here in Philadelphia with deep ties to Pittsburgh. He was often described as a Boy Scout with a simple challenge to his staff to always do the right thing, no matter the consequences. But what if doing the right thing costs you your job? What if you taking a stand loses you votes? What if you're misunderstood? Some might argue that this is exactly what happened to today's guest. Stay with us. Everyone said that Tom Corbett looked the part of the good guy, right out of central casting, clean cut, careful with his words, someone you might see as an FBI or CIA director. He was an assistant DA, a U.S. attorney, and a two-term state attorney general, all before becoming governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. In 2014, he did something few incumbent governors in modern Pennsylvania history have experienced. He lost a bid for a second term. When his official portrait was unveiled last year, many observed the exquisite detail in the artist's portrayal of the governor, especially hinted at his character, an inner light and joy only few got to see when he had the top job. Governor Corbett, welcome to State of Independence. It's an honor to have you on the program today.
Well, Joe, thank you for having me on, and you were really embarrassing.
No need to embarrass. I remember when you were a candidate back in 2009, I know a bunch of us remarked how much like a governor you looked, even before you were elected. You just looked like somebody out of central casting. And and people know you as the Attorney General, the State Attorney General. They know you as the Governor of Pennsylvania. But a lot of people haven't gotten to know you as a person. They haven't gotten to know the warm Tom Corbett behind the office. Tell us a little bit about your journey. Did you think when you were a kid growing up, did your parents ever think when you were a kid growing up that you were going to someday become governor of Pennsylvania?
No. Simple as that. And I have to share with you, I live in the house I grew up here in Pittsburgh. We moved out of Philadelphia when I was one, moved to Harrisburg, moved to Pittsburgh, and moved into this house in 1956. And the room that I'm talking to you from, this nice blue room behind me, was my bedroom. Wow. It's now my studio. It's my den, my wife's den. Her desk is right behind me. And I can tell you, and I've thought about this before being up here, when I used to lay in this room and look at the ceiling, I never envisioned being a governor or anything like that. Maybe a right fielder or a left fielder for the Pittsburgh Pirates or something, but it was never my goal to become the governor. And I go back, Bill Clinton, I mean, it was his goal to become president from when he's at least a teenager or maybe younger. And some people have those goals, but mine was more one that when opportunity presented itself, I took the risk, the chance, because I felt that I could do the job. And that started out from the time, I guess, way back when I became a lifeguard. I said that began my public service as a lifeguard in public protection, and continued with me throughout my entire career and continues to be with me.
Yeah, well, that's a wonderful heart to have, a servant's heart. To look at it that way, a lot of people see this as kind of the brass ring. I want to be governor one day. That's a big deal. I want to be able to say that I had the seat. But you always saw yourself as somebody serving others. And I bet there are a few people in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that know that you're also a person of faith. Talk to all of us about that. I know people are watching right now and they're at the edge of their seat because they'd love to know about your faith and about what you believe.
Well, and thank you for that. And I guess I grew up Roman Catholic. In fact, as we spoke off air, I was actually baptized in Our Lady of Lourdes out there in West Philadelphia, just off of Lancaster Avenue, and went through Catholic grade school, changed into public high school, and went to a Methodist college, United Methodist College, Lebanon Valley, and then a Catholic law school in San Antonio, Texas, called St. Mary's University. But I was always Roman Catholic. And I guess through the education and going to church on a regular basis, I developed a belief that he has a plan for us. We don't know what his plan is. And if you work hard and do the right thing, You may not get everything that you want, and some people want riches and so forth, but you'll have a good life. And that's really what this is about. It's about service, service to our Maker, but service to the people around us, and about being able to be comfortable with yourself. And I've always been able to be comfortable with myself. And probably the most difficult time was when we lost the election of 2014. And I felt more that I let people down than I was upset about not winning. But it comes back to believing that he has a plan. He presents us with opportunities. My mother used to say, every time the Lord closes a door, he opens a window. And I certainly believe that. I lost my mother when I was 17, and she died in her mid-50s. And that was certainly a door closing. But within 3 years, I met a young woman. She was a freshman. I was a sophomore. And we're coming up in December on our 49th wedding anniversary. That is, in thinking about it, and in talking with a young man that was here earlier today at our house, that was his plan. We met, that was his plan. I wasn't going to date her. I was dating her friend. And her friend got injured, minor injury, was an excuse for not to go out on a date. So would you mind if I take Sue out? And I was liking Sue. And that was it. October the 5th, 1968. Wow. We've been together since.
I love it. I love it. What you're saying is not too different from what Ronald Reagan said about God having a plan for us, for our lives. And it's wonderful when people see it, when they know that he's in control and that he has a plan for us, and seek to be obedient to his plan for their life. And you've been blessed. God has opened doors and closed doors, and you see how he's moved in your life, and he's blessed you with your wonderful wife to be your spouse for these 49 years, which is just a blessing for the two of you.
Absolutely.
Tell me what you learned from the defeat in 2014. I know that must have been hard. I've always admired that you have never been a braggart. You've never been somebody who's puffed up and proud. You've just been somebody who cares about serving people. And I know that the loss must have been difficult, but it's amazing how God is able to use us even in defeat. How did he use your defeat for you? Well,
as I said, the door closes, the window opens. And throughout my career, opportunities have presented themselves, and I've taken the initiative to see if I could do it. Well, now I have a different opportunity. Some people would say it's not an opportunity, but I now have a new course in life. So that was 6 years ago. I was in my mid-60s, but I had at that time 5 grandchildren and another one on the way. So it was now, okay, we're going to become a grandfather and do that. We help. I'm my wife's assistant. Right now, she is kindergarten grandma with 2 of them once a week. And I help her when she needs help. But it was basically took a mental year off. Thought about what we could do. We had purchased a home, a condominium down in Hilton Head. And if my daughter hadn't moved back to Philadelphia, my son moved back to Pittsburgh from Philadelphia, and my son moved back to Pittsburgh from California, we probably would have been down there by now. And that was what we thought we were doing because the grandchildren weren't going to be around. Once the grandchildren all show up here, we're staying here.
Yeah.
In fact, we're just finishing remodeling our house, which is a pre-Civil War. The room I'm in is part of a log cabin that was built in 1870, and we just did the kitchen, literally be finished on Friday. So you throw yourself into other things. But one of the other things I'm doing now is also teaching at Duquesne Law School, which I love the opportunity to teach. I teach a course on principles of prosecution, keyword principles. I teach a course on law, the legislature and executive branch, public policy, which I say is now we're going to tell you the rest of the story and invite guests in, including, Sister Mary Scullin over in Philadelphia. She was my last in-person guest right before COVID hit back in 2019. So you know, you look for opportunities. I continue to look for opportunities. I do a little consulting with everybody, but I'm happy. And I'm happy. And that's the most important thing. I'm happy with my family, happy with my wife, and happy with the people I work with and the opportunity to teach young people to become good, ethical lawyers.
Yeah, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing that to be able to be a grandfather to your grandchildren and to be able to teach other people, to help them learn from all your wonderful experiences. And you've had many and many wonderful experiences as a leader, and even in the years before you were a leader. That's wonderful. You know, some people seem to thrive in the limelight, like President Trump, and to some degree President Biden. I mean, they thrive in the limelight. And clearly, when you're the governor of a state, you are in the limelight. Did you feel like you thrived in the limelight? And what, in retrospect, was the hardest part of your job as governor?
I was comfortable there. Having been an assistant district attorney for almost 4 years, I was in the courtroom daily. That's a stage. Well, politics, as you well know, is a stage. So I knew not to play the role, but to be the role. So I was very comfortable doing that. But I was not comfortable on behalf of my family with all the criticisms leveled at me. I can take it, but how it was affecting my family. And if you recall back, I had a primary battle in 2010 2004 for Attorney General. And that was back in the days so that people could respond to the Inquirer stories or anything and write in nasty things. And it drove my wife and my kids absolutely crazy. Not comfortable with that. And that's the unfair part that goes on, particularly with the change in technology and people being able to voice anything they want to and be anonymous about it. Probably the most difficult thing, but the one that you have to be able to do, is raising money. And we raised, on behalf of my 2 campaigns as Attorney General, 2 campaigns as governor, assisting the Republican Attorney Generals Association, the Republican Governors Association, raising money, a lot of money. And really, it is hard to ask for money. I know some people in my profession, they don't have trouble asking for it at all. And I was able to do it, and I had good friends. And one of my very good friends, and you and I both know him very well, a very good supporter of Republicans, and I would not have gotten either of those 2 jobs without his help. And that's Bob Asher from Montgomery County. Yeah. And he's a strong person of faith. And with a supporter like him, and here in Western Pennsylvania, you knew Elsie Hillman, and we lost her a couple of years ago. Yeah. I had somebody that could maybe go ask the question for me, but I still had to make the phone calls and see that. That is much harder than actually doing the job, as far as I was concerned. Let me go do the job. Yeah. And finally, I'll just say this. If the Attorney General hadn't been term limited, no offense to Josh Shapiro, but I might still be the Attorney General.
You love the job.
I love the job, but when I got my second term, and when I won by the margin I did, the first time a Republican got over 3 million votes in the history of Pennsylvania, party people came to me and said, "You got to run for governor." And that was the first time I ever even thought about running for governor. Now, I used to walk my dog past the governor's residence every once in a while. Yeah. I used to say, boy, that would be a nice place to live.
That's right. The governor's mansion. Yeah. And it came true for you, which is wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's where I go, he's the one, he had a role for me. And if you think of some of the things that I had to deal with in the very beginning of being Attorney General, but also of being governor, he had me there for a reason. In 2011, when I first took office, we had major floods. And as you probably remember, up through the Susquehanna, up in the same area that Hurricane Agnes hit back in 1972, had to deal with that from an emergency management standpoint. In fact, it's the first time I ever met now President Biden. He was touring the area as vice president up in the town of Duryea. We had long conversations. I actually became friends with Beau Biden because he was interested in what I was doing earlier as Attorney General. And when he became an Attorney General, we brought him up to Pennsylvania and showed him the child predator unit we created and what we were doing there. So I had very comfortable conversations with the Vice President during our walk up there. But I think about it, okay, I'm here for a reason. And I'm going to act. And I'm going to act the way I think we need to act. And as you well know, in that time, we had to deal with the budget being $4.2 billion underfunded. And my first budget probably is what put me on the course to not getting reelected. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. So if you had to do it all over again, I mean, if you had a second bite at the apple, so to speak, and you were able to do it over again, what would you do differently? Is there anything would you make? I mean, sometimes hard decisions, even decisions that might lose you a seat, were the right decision, or as you may have thought. Would you do anything differently?
Sure, and I've thought about it many, many times since. Not increasing the budget, even though the media called it a budget cut, as you well know, it wasn't a budget cut. We just didn't add any new funding to it because we didn't have it. They had balanced the budget on the stimulus money that came in under Barack Obama. Similar to what's going on now with all that money coming in, it's not there in 2 years. And we knew it wasn't going to be there when we took office. But there's where I didn't wear a political hat. I wore a prosecutor's hat. We worked on that budget, came out, gave the budget address in March, and hit everybody right between the eyes. Because they were saying, well, you're cutting. No, we're not cutting. We just don't have more money, and I'm not raising taxes. Because I had said during campaigns, fiscal discipline, limited government, free enterprise. Fiscal discipline means that you can't spend money you don't have, and we're not going to raise taxes. So I kept to that promise. If I had it to do over with again, I would have started informing people right the second day in office that there's going to be tough fiscal times here. Get them ready for it. I didn't know exactly what they were going to be until we got much closer to the presentation of the budget. But I should have been working the General Assembly more, bringing them in more than I did. I think if I had done that, I don't know I'd necessarily would have won, but it may have made the road a little bit easier than it was.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, of course, for all of us, I guess hindsight is 20/20. But you know, we can only do the best we can with the information that we have at the time, and
Right.
and then allow God to lead us. And I think you did that with a right heart, and you had the courage to make decisions that you felt were in the best interest of the people that you were elected to serve. That's a hard thing to do. It's hard. It's really, really hard to, when you're a public servant, not to be about self-service. You know, to be about how do I elongate my career? How do I further my career? How do I take care of me? It's a hard thing to not be tempted to do that. But I give you a lot of credit for being who you were and for telling people the truth, even when the truth wasn't so pretty, and for being willing to stand despite the circumstances during that period of time. I think that's wonderful. When we come back, I want to talk to Governor Corbett about books he's been reading or rereading lately, and I'll also ask him about what the new mission he thinks God might have for him to accomplish in this new season of life might be, out of public office, that is. Stay with us.
Learn more about Joe Watkins and the mission of this program at joewatkins.net. And tell Joe what you thought about today's program in the comment box.
We're with Pennsylvania's 46th governor, Tom Corbett, reflecting in a somewhat different way about life and leadership. Governor, this has been a wonderful time. Tell me what you read, or what you think might be good for our viewers to read that might be helpful to them.
Well, I think on a prior show, because I saw that on Facebook with Jeff, you talked about Benjamin Rush.
Yes.
And I read Benjamin Rush, I think back in November or December. And I had knew of Benjamin Rush, but that was it. I found reading that book so interesting to read. I like history. I was a political science major, but I took a lot of history. And I particularly like reading it with the idea that I can picture everywhere they're talking about, because it was set in Philadelphia, very small part of Philadelphia, probably from where City Hall is now to the river, and the different houses, but the different roles he played as a founding father that a lot of people don't know. I have a series of presidential biographies that have been given to me. I haven't read them all that I have, but the one that I read about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and I was rereading it for now, was Decision Points with President Bush, 43. If you've ever met the president, he's a very friendly person. He's not the portrayal in the media is totally unfair, and I say the national media. He's a very warm individual. I've seen some interviews of him lately. That's starting to come through because they're seeing him. You don't have to be on guard, and I think that's part of the one thing, you have to be on guard. But I remember we were at the State Chamber of Commerce dinner a few years ago. He's out of office, and he was sitting at my table. We just sat there and had a great conversation. You know, he's one of these guys. Hey, bud. You know. And he loved the fact I had gone to law school at St. Mary's University in San Antonio, Texas. So he said, "You're Texan." I said, "Well, you know, we actually served in the Air National Guard at the same time. I was enlisted man. You were a pilot. We weren't in the same unit, but that's when I was down there. I was in the Air Guard." And we just had a great conversation, very easy. And what you see is what you get. And I think that's with me, the same thing. What you see is what you get. I'm not going to put on airs. I don't think he puts on airs. He comes from a different economic strata than I come from, but that's about it. He puts his boots on, he goes to work. Yeah. And I really like that about it. And when you read the decision points that he had to make, I was most recently reading his decision, of who he was going to appoint as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, death of Rehnquist, and how he went about that process and how he reads about that and how he prepares his day by reading his devotional. I thought, this is what the general public doesn't know. But his most important decision point was deciding to give up alcohol. Now, I want to tell you, I haven't given up alcohol. I like a beer one. But he had to give it up because he couldn't control it. And how that changed his life and how he met his wife. I met my wife. If I didn't have my wife, I'm not sure I would have gotten where I got. She helped me become a better individual, but particularly a better student and get through college and law school, and helps me here. She helped write speeches for me. Wow. When I was governor. So those are two. Now, I also like the mystery books that are out there, the spy mystery books. I'll read those. And I just finished one that's a little bit different. It doesn't deal with Pennsylvania. It's David McCullough, who you probably know well. Oh, yeah. And he's written a number of books. And one of them, the most recent one, is called Pioneers. And it is the opening of the Northwest Territory, which started at the Ohio line. And the founding, basically, of Ohio by people from Massachusetts buying land out there and opening it up to its development back in the mid-70s, after we won the Revolution. And just interesting to see the characters. They founded the town of Marietta, about a 2.5 hour ride from here in Pittsburgh. We're going to go down there just because I want to see it. I've never been to Marietta. But they made it a colonial town, a Northeast colonial town, New England colonial town. And I just want to go see it. But the character development and the description of coming through Pennsylvania and staying at Hummelstown or Harrisburg, or going up over the mountains, and it's not a barn burner where you have to keep reading. You can set it down, but it was very educational and entertaining at the same time.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's so wonderful. Well, thank you, Governor Corbett, for the privilege of knowing your thoughts about what it takes to be a good leader. And thank you as well for challenging a new generation of leaders to do the right thing, even when the cost is high.
Well, I appreciate. Thank you for having me on. I think being a good leader is doing the right thing and keeping your word.
Amen. Amen. When we come back, closing thoughts with my friend and producer, Jeff Coleman.
Learn more about Joe Watkins and the mission of this program at joewatkins.net. And tell Joe what you thought about today's program in the comment box.
And now we're going to talk to our great producer, Jeff Coleman.
Well, that was a great conversation for a number of reasons. First, I don't think anybody has ever really heard Tom Corbett in a public setting reflect that way. And as he said, time and space and not being responsible to sign budgets and be in a public debate allows you to maybe speak more candidly. But I do think the other thing that this revealed is that it reminds us that political leaders are not their yard signs, their TV commercials. They're not the sum total of whether they made a good speech or not. They're people, they're grandparents, they remodel homes, they fix up kitchens, they make decisions about where to live based on their grandkids.
Yeah, well, he talked about in this next phase of life, I mean, the importance of being able to be a grandpa to his grandkids. Yeah. And that's wonderful. I mean, that's what it's all about in this life is doing for others and loving the people around you.
Yes.
How can you say you love God if you don't love the people around you?
Right.
And if you're gifted to have grandchildren, how can you not love them?
Yeah.
You know, I've got grandchildren. I love them. They are wonderful.
I can tell you do.
Yeah, they're wonderful. They're wonderful.
We're going to have them on the show sometime.
Oh, I'd love that.
As for the rest of the story.
I would love that.
But I was just very thankful that we were able to get another side, and one of the goals of this program is really to help people not see the political leaders or public leaders or actors or stars as one-dimensional, the role they play, but the people who they are. And those people have the same pressures and require the same ballast. And what you find out is that many of these leaders are anchored by their faith.
I love what he said when he said that, you know, God has a plan. God has a plan for me. That's the same thing that Ronald Reagan said.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't ever made public, but Ronald Reagan said, you know, God has a plan for my life. And here it is, Tom Corbett saying, you know what, God had a plan for my life. He's had a plan for my life the whole time. And I'm just trying to be faithful to it.
So doesn't that give encouragement to people who are watching today, who say, my life is over, you know, I don't have grandchildren, my career is finished, I'm just sitting and waiting. And the idea that, no, you still have a mission, just look in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as God has gifted you with life, you have work to do.
Yeah.
It's something for you to do. That's just wonderful.
It was a good show. It was a really good show, encouraging for me.
I enjoyed talking with him. Yeah, what a blessing. Well, I hope that today's conversation with former Governor Tom Corbett encouraged you to look beyond the big titles and temporary assignments God occasionally gives us. Most of the important work we do will never be seen or known by anyone. The way we live outside of the spotlight says a lot more about our good performances in front of a watching and cheering audience. I hope that today's program frees you up to love the Lord with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. That's what this program is all about. If you have a minute, drop me a line in the comment box at joewatkins.org. It means a lot to me and our guests to know when a conversation is especially helpful to you. From America's first capital, Philadelphia, I'm Joe Watkins. Thanks so much for watching. Great to talk to the governor.
Yeah, I guess the regrets you always have are you wish people would have known. But on the other hand, you don't need to change the plan.
That's exactly right.
Joe Watkins' State of Independence is a production of Lighthouse TV, positively different. Made possible in part because of the support of viewers like you.